Greetings class, welcome to Duel Academy. ProfessoRivas here, and this will be the third lesson of your second class in your raw yellow term, YGO Game Terminology, Game Action Terms. If you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to be up to date with the latest Duel Academy lessons and assessments. So without further ado, get your deck, get your game on, and let's get started. Absorb. The act of using a monster as an equip card or treat it as Xyz's material, then possibly gain its power. Examples of monsters with the ability to absorb would be Borreload Savage Dragon and Cyber Dragon Infinity. Borreload Savage allows it to absorb a link monster in your graveyard and gets counters based on its rating. Not only does it increase Borreload Savage's attack, but also gives it negates based on those new counters. Cyber Dragon Infinity allows for it to absorb a face-up monster for material, increasing the number of times it can use its effect. Bounce. The act of returning a card from the field to the hand. An example of a card that can bounce a card back to the hand would be Penguin Soldier, which states, Flip. You can target up to 2 monsters on the field, return those targets to the hand. Cards with the ability to bounce are useful against cards that are unable to be destroyed. Brick. A bad card combination in the hand that results in the player having to make a suboptimal play or no play at all. You may hear a player say that they bricked. This just means that their hand was basically unplayable. An example of a brick would be going first and drawing 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons, 1 Dragon Spirit of White, and 1 Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon. As you can see, not a single play can be made, therefore, you bricked. Burn. Effect damage and the act of using it. Burn can be done from monsters, spells, and traps. Examples of burn from each type of card would be Solar Flare Dragon, Sparks, and Just Desserts. All 3 cards deal damage to your opponent through its effects. Chain. A stack that determines the order of resolution of activated cards and effects. Cards and effects go on a chain if and only if they activate. In order to start a chain, a card must be activated. To continue the chain, the card continuing that chain must have an equal or greater spell speed than the previous card. An example of a chain would be your opponent activating Reinforcement of the Army, a spell speed 1 normal spell that allows the player to search for a warrior monster and add it from deck to hand. You can then chain Ash Blossom, a spell speed 2 quick effect monster that would negate the search of Reinforcement of the Army. However, your opponent can then chain Called by the Grave, a spell speed 2 quick play spell which would banish Ash Blossom from the grave and negate its effect. Then, you can chain Solemn Judgment, a spell speed 3 counter trap that negates the effect of Called by the Grave. In this chain, Reinforcement of the Army is Chainlink 1, Ash Blossom is Chainlink 2, Called by the Grave is Chainlink 3, and Solemn Judgment is Chainlink 4. Since chains resolve backwards, the Chainlink 4 Solemn Judgment resolves first and negates the Chainlink 3 Called by the Grave. Since the Chainlink 3 Called by the Grave was negated, the Chainlink 2 Ash Blossom can resolve, therefore allowing the Ash Blossom to negate the Chainlink 1 Reinforcement of the Army. Chain Block. Creating a chain that would prevent card effects from activating in response to a specific card. A chain block can occur when multiple cards have their effects triggered simultaneously. Since a card in a chain link can only affect the previous card in the chain, ordering your chain link in a specific order can cause a chain block. For example, let's say you have Geomathmech Final Sigma on your field and it's equipped with Mathmech Billion Blade Nayuta. If Final Sigma was destroyed, both the monster and equip spell would have their effects triggered simultaneously, allowing you to order the chain link as you see fit. If Final Sigma is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can search a Mathmech card from your deck to the hand. If Billion Blade Nayuta is sent from the spell and trap zone to the graveyard, you can target a Mathmech card in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Now, let's say you declare Billion Blade Nayuta as Chainlink 1 and Final Sigma as Chainlink 2. Your opponent can then chain Ash Blossom as Chainlink 3. negating the Chain Link 2 Final Sigma effect of adding a Math Mech card from your deck to the hand. Sure, the Chain Link 1 Billion Blade Nayuta would still resolve, but you just lost value by losing Final Sigma's effect. Now, let's try that in reverse. In the same situation, let's say you declared Final Sigma as Chain Link 1 and Billion Blade Nayuta as Chain Link 2. With Billion Blade Nayuta as Chain Link 2, an Ash Blossom would not be able to be added to the chain, since it wouldn't have any effect on Billion Blade's effect to add from graveyard to hand, therefore chain blocking your opponent. With the chain links ordered this way, Ash Blossom would not be able to disrupt the search effect of Final Sigma, which was the whole purpose of the chain block. Disrupt. The continual use of floodgate and/or counter trap cards. Basically, any type of card that slows down and/or stops your opponent's plays is disruption, whether they're floodgates, counter traps, or even hand traps. Dump. The act of getting cards in the graveyard so that those cards would be used later from the graveyard. An example of a card that dumps from deck to graveyard is Foolish Burial. With so many cards with powerful graveyard reliant effects, dumping cards can be extremely powerful. Search. The act of looking through the deck and adding a card of choice to your hand. Cards that search greatly increases a deck's consistency, which is why cards like Reinforcement of the Army and Terraforming are so important to their respective decks. Mill. The act of sending cards from the top of a player's deck to the graveyard. A deck that is well known for its milling is Lightsworns, where the effects of many of their cards involve milling to fill up their graveyard to gain access to their boss monster, Judgment Dragon. Next, we need to discuss card economy. All cards either make you lose advantage by a minus, gain advantage by a plus, or remain neutral. Minus. Decreasing the number of cards in one's hand or field. An example of a minus would be from a card like Two-Pronged Attack, which states, select and destroy 2 of your monsters and 1 of your opponent's monsters. You must use this card and an additional 2 monsters for a total of 3 cards to destroy 1 of your opponent's monsters. Since you need 3 cards to destroy your opponent's 1 card, this is considered a -2, or a -2. Plus. Increasing the number of cards in one's hand or field. An example of a plus would be Pot of Greed. This card is the epitome of a true plus, allowing you to draw 2 cards with no drawbacks. Since you must use the 1 Pot of Greed to receive 2 cards, this is a +1. Keep in mind, at the time of recording this video, and most likely forever, Pot of Greed is forbidden. We also have 1-for-1 cards like Terraforming, which is basically an even swap, given neither a plus nor minus. Nuke. The act of destroying many or all cards on the field at once. Some examples of cards that nuke the board would be Judgment Dragon and Beast King Barbaros. Open, or open with. A player's starting hand cards before the draw phase. Rip. Forcing your opponent to discard a card. An example of a card that rips a card from the hand is White Magical Hat, which states, when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent's life points, your opponent discards 1 card randomly from his or her hand. Sacrifice. Tributes, materials, or costs, and the act of using them. Self-protection. A card effect that can protect itself from leaving the field. Many boss monsters nowadays have self-protection effects, such as Red Eye's Dark Dragoon and Geomath Mech Final Sigma. Spawn. The act of summoning the same monster, usually token or low-level monster, with another card from time to time. Spam. The act of repeatedly using card effects. Spin. The act of placing a card on the field on top of the deck. Examples of cards that spin other cards to the top of the deck would be Back to Square One and Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. Stall. The act of prolonging the game without a card effect, which will be met with penalties at tournaments. Stalling is most common during Game 3 of a match. Being in Game 3 means both you and your opponent have a win, and Game 3 will determine the winner of the match. If a duelist is winning during Game 3, they may stall to run out the clock in order to win by having more life points. However, this is not allowed and a player may be penalized for stalling, also known as slow playing. Crash. The act of intentionally attacking knowing the attacker will be destroyed. For example, intentionally attacking your opponent's Gearfried the Iron Knight with your Legion, knowing they will both be destroyed. Swarm. The act of summoning many monsters in a turn regardless of battle power. Swing. The act of declaring an attack. You may also hear the phrase swing for game, which means attacking to win the game. T-set. Setting a monster face down and then setting a face down spell or trap in the same column. So called because this setup results in the shape of a T. T-setting was very prominent in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh! In today's game, not so much due to the accelerated pace of the game. Tag out. The act of a monster removing itself from the field and replacing itself with a different monster. Thin. The act of removing cards from one's deck during a duel to increase the chances of drawing particular cards. Thinning out your deck allows for the increased probability of drawing the cards you need to draw. A card like Thunder Dragon helps thin out a deck with an effect which states, you can discard this card, add up to 2 Thunder Dragon from your deck to your hand. By doing this, you have thinned out your deck by 2 cards. Throw. The act of placing a card on your opponent's field in order to hinder them. Lava Golemed, Kaiju'd. Tribute an opponent's monster to replace them with your card, usually with those specified cards. With so many boss monsters with self-protection, cards you can throw to your opponent's field, like Kaiju's, Lava Golem, and Raw Sphere Mode, is critical. Since the cards mentioned tribute the opponent's monsters, their self-protection effects do not apply. Piercing. The act of inflicting piercing battle damage. An example of a card that does piercing is Cyber End Dragon, which deals damage even when attacking a defense position monster. Top deck, or heart of the cards. The top card of the deck, or the act of placing a card on top of the deck, can also refer to entire decks where the sole outcome is dependent on cards that reside at the top of the deck. Clutch/sack. The act of drawing a card that perfectly fits the situation, possibly overturning the game state in the player's favor. Thank you so much for attending this class. There will be a quiz in this lesson, so don't forget to take it. Your final exam will follow soon after. I hope you have a great day, and class dismissed.